If you're a business owner, agency owner, or consultant and you still spend countless hours every single week manually researching leads before a sales call, in this video, I'm going to show you how to build out a super simple AI automation system that not only researches your lead for you and provides a detailed sales report telling you all about the lead, but also provides personalized insights so you can go into that call knowing you have a much higher likelihood of actually closing that deal. I'm going to be walking you through an overview of the high-level architecture of a system like this, just so you can see how it works. And then we're going to be jumping over to the actual automation software so I can show you a demo of what this actually looks like, and also walk you through the step-by-step components so you can actually go away and set this up for yourself. But all in all, implementing a system like this where AI actually researches the lead for you and provides detailed insights is not only going to save you or your team hundreds of hours every single year researching leads, but is also going to massively increase your close rate and make you come across on these calls as a well-researched and professional business. So let me pull up my screen now and let's actually dive into what a system like this looks like. So I've just pulled up my screen here. I want to walk you through a quick flow of how this works. So first of all, there's always going to be some kind of booking software where a new sales call actually comes in, and this is actually going to trigger the first step in our automation. So for example, here we've got Calendly, we've got Go High Level. There's a few different scheduling softwares that people use, and obviously depending on the business that you're in, your intake form is going to have a bunch of different questions. But for example, you might be using a intake form like Calendly, and the main questions that you might ask when someone books in a sales call might be full name, email, company URL, LinkedIn URL, and revenue. For this example, I'm going to be showing you how with minimal information about the company URL and the actual LinkedIn URL, we're going to be able to use AI to extract highly relevant insights. So once a sales call gets booked, this is going to trigger the first step in our workflow. So what's going to happen then is we're going to take that LinkedIn URL that the prospect provided to us, given that it's actually a valid LinkedIn URL. And what we're going to do then is we're going to scrape all of the company LinkedIn URL data, which is going to give us insights into what industry they're in, what's the actual company size. So depending on your business, you might want to work with different company sizes. This will give us information about where they're located. For example, you might only want to target US-based businesses. And it's also going to be able to scrape the description of the LinkedIn company URL and some recent posts to give us an overview of what the company actually does. Now, once we've extracted all these insights, we can actually use AI in order to structure and summarize all these insights so we can use them more readily available in subsequent modules. So once we've extracted all the data from the company's LinkedIn URL, which I'm going to show you how to do in a second, the next step is actually to scrape the company's homepage URL just to kind of get an overview of what the company does based on their homepages. And what we can do from this website URL is we can then grab all of the other URLs on the company's website, which are going to be much more relevant in order to give us detailed and targeted information. For example, a page about the company's pricing or the About Us page is going to give us a lot more relevant insights than just a generic homepage. So what we'll do then is we'll then categorize the most important pages on a website that we actually want to scrape. For example, we might have a section that grabs the About Us page or anything similar to that. And we might have another section that grabs information about a company's product or their actual offer. And then finally, we might scrape a page that has something to do with their testimonials, case studies, or results that they've generated for other people. And there's a super easy way we'll be able to go about doing that. Basically using AI to say, given all of these URLs on the page, please extract the 3 most relevant URLs that have to do with this specific feature. So that once AI has actually extracted the 3 most relevant URLs that we're going to scrape, what we can then do is scrape all of those individual URLs to get all of the information and data from those pages. And then we can use 3 different AI prompts to individually analyze each one of those pages. That's going to give us useful information that we can then use to plug that into our final sales report. So you can see here, I've included a first module, which basically extracts all of the relevant information from the About Us page or something similar to that. Then we have a second AI prompt that extracts all the relevant information from the product or the offer page. And then thirdly here we have an AI prompt that extracts all the relevant information from the case studies and testimonials page. And usually what you find from working with most B2B businesses are these are the most common kind of page categories that companies have. So we can instruct our AI to generate us these kind of pages from the list of URLs, or if not, return us a page that's relevant to that. So then finally, once we have all of the information from the company's LinkedIn page, and we've also scraped all of the data from the most relevant company URLs, what we can then do is we can then generate generate a sales report using another AI module that's basically going to be able to summarize all of the data that we've collected into sales ready insights and give us information about what the company does, their offer, and any of the people that they've worked with in the past. And this is going to give us all of the information in less than 5 minutes that we need to prepare for a sales call. So finally, for this example here, I've actually gone ahead and formatted it into a Google Doc that basically has different sections that goes through each individual component. But depending on the kind of business that you're in and your specific workflow, for example, you might want to add all of this information to the lead's profile in the CRM, or you might want to notify yourself or one of your sales reps in a Slack channel or email channel that basically breaks down all of the relevant information and provides a link back to the CRM profile where they can check it out. But for this example, I'm just going to be producing a Google Doc to show you the kind of information you can actually get. So without further ado, let me hop over to make.com where I'm actually going to be building out this automation. What I'll do first is I'll show you step by step on how to set this up, and then finally at the end, stick around because I'll be walking you through a demo and actually showing you what this looks like with real life example. So I've just pulled up my make.com account now. I've gone ahead and gone over to my scenarios, and I've just pulled up the relevant scenario where I'm going to be showing you how this works. The first step here, as I mentioned, is going to be the trigger for our scenario, and the thing that's actually going to trigger our scenario is a custom webhook. And all that means is the webhook's just going to listen for information on our scheduling software for when a new sales call gets booked in. And when a new sales call gets booked in, this is basically going to trigger the automation and start the whole enrichment process. So the first step in the process is actually to set up a custom webhook with the scheduling software that you use. So that could be Calendly, Go High Level, or any kind of internal software. So it's pretty easy to set up. All you need to do is come in and press add, and you just need to create a new webhook, calling it whatever you like. And once that's created, it will basically give you a link here, and what you can go and do is go over to your scheduling software and set up a custom webhook so that when a new sales call gets booked, this will start to trigger the automation. Now, every single scheduling software will actually have a feature which will allow you to go in and place a custom webhook. For the example in this video, I'm going to be showing it with my scheduler software, which is cal.com. So if I head over to cal.com, I'll go and show you exactly how I set this up. So I'm inside cal.com now, and for this example, I'm just using my AI strategy call booking link. Every single scheduling software's interface is a little bit different. When we come into the actual booking event, there's an option down here that basically says webhooks. And as you can see here, I've got a webhook set up with the link that I showed you just a second ago. But for example, if you come into here and just click create webhook, and then you go and copy and paste this link that we have in here. For the actual event triggers, we just want booking created. So we can go ahead and delete all this other stuff that we don't need. And this is basically going to trigger when a new booking event gets created. And then all you have to do is come in and press create webhook, and you can test it just to make sure that it's working. I'm not going to go ahead and create another one for this video because I've already got one set up. But if we come over to here and I actually copy the link to this event and I paste that in, when we actually come over to here and we fill out these details here and press confirm, this is basically going to trigger the first step in our automation process, and it's going to start the process of actually researching and enriching the lead. I'm just going to run a previous run that I did a few days ago just so we have live data so I can show you how to set up the module step by step. You can see when a new sales call gets booked, we can actually come into here and see the data that we generated. So if we come into the payload and we go to the responses, we can see down here that we've generated a bunch of different variables, and these are all the variables that we use to fill out the cal.com booking link. So once a new sales call event actually gets triggered, the next step is to go in and scrape the company LinkedIn URL. And there's a few different ways to do this, but for the example in this video and this system here, I'm using a software called Apify. Now, if you're not familiar with Apify, it's pretty simple. It's just a marketplace where you can go in and access scrapers, which you can then use to go out and scrape certain things and retrieve all of the information that you need. So I'll just jump over to Apify to show you how it works. So there's a bunch of different scrapers that you can use. For example, you can come in and type in LinkedIn company profile, and there's going to be a bunch of different options here that you can basically use within your make.com scenario to go in and actually scrape relevant data. If I go ahead and go and jump over into my actors, you can see the one I'm using here is called bulk LinkedIn company profile scraper by DevFusion. And the way to set this up, you just come in and press this plus button and you just come to Apify. And what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to run an actor, which is basically going to go over to Apify and trigger that automation. Now, in order to connect to Apify, you just want to come over to here and press add and just connect your credentials. And from this, you can just use the simple Apify login. And once you've done that, you can come over here into actors and just select the actor you want to use. And the way for this to actually populate into here is you want to go over to Apify and just make sure you save an actor. And once you select an actor to use, it will give you a data structure here where you can basically go in and plug the LinkedIn URL that you want to use. If I click into this, we can see that 10.payload user field responses company LinkedIn is literally just the actual LinkedIn value that we scraped from here. And what I've done is I've just clicked value and I'll put it into here. And what that's basically going to tell Apify is we want to scrape that LinkedIn profile directly. And once you can do that, you just want to go ahead and click save. So what that's going to do is that's actually going to run the scrape. The second thing we want to do is collect all the dataset items from that. So we want a first step to actually run it and a second step to collect all the data from it. And you can see here, if we go into the data, it's going to give you lots and lots of structured but messy information. But it's basically going to tell us all of the information about the employee count, follower count, name, description, all that kind of stuff. So what I've done here just to make this 100 times easier is I've actually added in a AI module from ChatGPT that's basically going to take all of the insights that we generated from that, and it's going to put it into a structured, easy to understand format that we can plug into subsequent AI modules. So in terms of the system prompt, which basically tells the AI how to behave, I've just put you're an intelligent, helpful B2B sales research assistant. And just for the user prompts, which is actually telling it what to do, I've just told it you're extracting structured data from a LinkedIn company page. And your exact task is to extract specific factual information from the provided LinkedIn page, extracting only information that's explicitly present on the page. And I've just given it some instructions here. I've given it the kind of data I want it to extract, which is going to be relevant for our sales report. And then down here, I've actually told us how to output this data. So I've told it to output it using a JSON format, which basically is going to allow us to take those variables and use them in subsequent modules. And if this looks scary or you don't know how to set this up, it's pretty simple. Just go into AI and type in the variables that you actually want to generate and just ask, can you generate this as a JSON object? And what it's going to be able to do is it's going to be able to generate the key here. So we want the industry as a variable, and we also want it to tell us the exact industry the company's in. We want the company size as a variable, and we want to tell us the exact company size that the company has. So this is basically going to allow us to plug these variables into our sales report. So what we've got here, we've got the industry they're in, we've got the company size, we've got the location, we've got the about us section, a short summary, which AI is going to generate, and also a long summary. And you can see here, I'm only extracting factual data from the LinkedIn profile. A lot of people, when they scrape LinkedIn, they like to scrape all of the posts. They like to use AI to guess statistics about the company's profile. In my opinion, the best way to go about doing this is just use the AI to extract actual factual data, so that way when the AI conducts its research and summarizes the data, it's only giving us factual, real information, and it's not making up information to put into the sales report that might actually end up harming us in the long run. Now, what I've also done is I've included an additional prompt that basically gives the AI the actual input data to extract this information from. So I've just said, now extract from this company LinkedIn page content. And what I've done is I've just plugged in the variable from this get dataset items module that told us all of the information about the LinkedIn company profile. And the way to add this in is pretty simple. Just come down into here and just insert all of this. The last thing we want to do before we click save is just come down here into these advanced settings and just make sure the response format is formatted as a JSON object. So we can actually use this data here in variables in the next modules. And what we want to do is just click pass JSON response, so it actually goes ahead and recognizes them as variables, and we can go ahead and click save. Now the next step in the process here, now that we've scraped the company's LinkedIn profile and actually extracted those relevant insights, is to go ahead and grab the relevant website URLs and go about extracting data from those. Now the next step I've got in the process here, it's not 100% necessary, but if you're looking to produce production ready systems that always perform, it's important that we actually have all the data structured in the right way. So the next AI assistant here is to actually clean the website URLs. And why this is important is because when someone's booking in a sales call, there's multiple formats they can put the URL in. For example, it might be www.example.com. You could have a /, you could not have a /. Someone could come into here and type like the full HTTPS link. So we just want to clean the URL. So every time someone inputs their data, we always receive it in the same form. So if I come into make.com and just show you the prompt that I've used to do this, no need for a system prompt this time because it's just a simple operation. And by the way, I'm using GPT 4.1 as the model just because I find it the most reliable. I've just said here, your job here is to clean a website URL into the following format. Please remove all trailing slashes, for example, .com/. And also, if a website is just inputted as www.example.com, please change it to the following format and only output the clean URL. And what I've done here is I've just gone ahead and inserted the URL that we actually generated from the first module here. And what that's going to do is that's going to clean our URL to always output it in the following format. So once that's done, like with the company LinkedIn profile scrape, there's a bunch of different ways to extract the URLs from a website and generate the most useful ones. But for this example here, I'm actually going to be using another Apify actor. So if I go back into Apify and go to my actors, I'm actually going to be using this sitemap URL extractor. And what that means is it's just going to take the website URL that we give it, and it's just going to output a list of every single URL on that website. So once we get that big list of all the URLs on the website, we can then plug that into AI for it to generate us the most relevant ones. So as you can see here again, this is something that you can come and do inside Apify, but we're actually going to trigger it inside our make.com workflow. And the way to do this is just to set up run an actor again. So same system here, you just come in again and select the actor. And for the sitemap URLs, we want to paste the formatted website that we just generated with this AI prompt here. And we just want to put /sitemap.xml, and what that's going to do is it's going to generate all of the URL links. And what I usually like to do is just come in and click yes on this. So once we've done that, same thing here, we can come in and we can get all those dataset items. And the way to do that, which I didn't explain in the previous module, is you just come into the dataset ID here, and if you just click default dataset ID, it's going to give you a value, and this is going to link to the run that we just did here. So if you come in and you paste the default dataset ID, this is going to extract all of the data that we just generated. And then for the format, we always want it in JSON. So just to show you what the output of this looks like, so if we come into this here, you can see that we've generated hundreds of URLs that are all individual URLs that make up the website. Now, the way this module works is it outputs it into separate bundles, which is not really ideal if we want to go in and analyze all this data together. What that basically means is if we plugged all of those bundles into ChatGPT, it would run the operation 99 plus individual times looking at individual URLs. So what I want to do is I want to get all of these URLs together into one bundle, so we can just plug them into ChatGPT and just say, can you analyze this in one operation? So if you just create an aggregator module, which you can just come into this green button here and click aggregator, you can just select the source module as the dataset items, and we just want to aggregate all of the URLs into one bundle. So I click save. I'll show you what that looks like if we come into here. We've got all of these individual bundles here. And if we come down here into the output, it will just output them into one bundle that we can use to plug into ChatGPT. So you can see here it's got all of the individual URLs. Cool, so now that we've extracted all of the URLs from the company's website, the next step is to actually go into an OpenAI ChatGPT module and create a prompt that gives us the most relevant URLs to analyze. We've got a super simple system prompt here that just says you're a sales research assistant analyzing website URLs to identify the most valuable pages for understanding a B2B company's offerings, credibility, and value proposition. And if I scroll down here into the user prompts, we've got a task. So just analyze the provided list of URLs from a company's sitemap and identify the 3 most relevant pages across these categories. So for the first one here, we want to extract the company's overview or mission, and we want to look for URLs containing about us, company, mission, value, story. Now, every single company that comes in and books a sales call, they're going to have different page titles that actually relate to this, but the core theme is what we're actually looking for here. Now, the second thing we want to take from the company's URL is their product, service, offering page. And this will give us relevant information into the kind of products that they use, their tech stack, what they actually offer, the clients they serve, which will give us a lot of information going into the sales call. So typical URL names include products, services, solutions, what we do, what we offer. And then lastly here, we want to look at social proof and credibility. So a lot of the URLs where you can see this contain case studies, testimonials, reviews, and these are typical pages that every single B2B business has. And then lastly, I've just put a few rules here. So the first one is for this category, do not choose the top level case study or testimonials page. This is just because we want to get granular on the kind of case studies and testimonials that they have. So if the AI was just to analyze the generic case studies page, it's not going to tell us a lot about the kind of clients that they worked with. So we want to get a specific case study. And you can see here, I've just given it instructions on what exactly that means. And once again, I've told it to output its answer using a valid JSON array. All that means is basically just a list of URLs with each individual section included. So example here, we've got example.com/about, example.com/product, example.com/case studies. And this is what I want the AI to output. And I've included just a few rules here so that AI gives us the most relevant results. So we've got for each category, select the single most relevant URL from the big list of URLs that we give it. prioritize URLs that appear to be primary pages. So this is for the actual offering page and the about us page. We want to have the main pages there. But for the actual case studies page, like I said, we want to extract a more in-depth URL as opposed to just a generic case studies page. Also important here, if a category has no matching URL, try to return the closest matching URL. This is just because if for some reason a company doesn't have an about us page or they don't have an offering page, this is just going to give us a page that's most closely related to that, so we can still extract some relevant information and it doesn't just return an empty list. Also, I've told it to avoid these pages like blog, news, careers, jobs. Depending on the industry you're in, like careers and jobs might be relevant to you. For this example, I just want to generate these 3 main page categories. And then the same system again, I've included another user prompt that just inputs the data, which is the array of the 3 URLs that we generated. And if I show you where that was, this was in the aggregator module here, where we outputted a list of arrays. And what that's going to generate, I'll show you a quick example here. If you come into the output, you go into the result, what it'll generate is 3 relevant URLs. So you can see here, we've got 1 URL that tells us the about page or the brand story. We've got 1 URL that tells us about their marketing strategy. And we've got 1 URL that tells us about a specific client success story. So in the same way, we actually aggregated all those URLs so we can put them together for the ChatGPT module to analyze. You can see here the result of these, they're all stuck together. So if we were to go and scrape all of those individually, it wouldn't actually register because all of these are in the same bundle. So it would just take the first value. So what we actually want to do is we want to do the opposite of aggregating, and we actually want to iterate them into their own specific bundle, so that when we plug it into the next module to actually scrape them individually, it processes them one by one. So it does the first one, then it does the second one, and then it does the third one. So I've actually set up an iterator module, which if you come down into here, you could just see as iterator, and it's basically the opposite of an aggregator. So it just takes all of the variables and it splits them up into their own separate bundles, so we can process them individually. And the way they're set up, I've just plugged in the result from the actual ChatGPT module. So if you come into here, you can see down here the result. You always want to grab the array, which basically means the list of values. And what that does, it will show you, like you can see here, it just splits them up into their own separate bundles. So we have 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. And you can see how when we process this, it then turns this into 3 separate executions rather than 1. So the next module here is actually to scrape the data from those URLs. Now, in order to do this, we actually use something called a HTTP request module. So if we come into here and just click make a request, what this basically does is if we plug the URL that we want into here, this will basically search up the exact URL that we're after and scrape all the data from that page. So I've just plugged in the value of the iterator module here into here. And what that basically does is it gives it a list of 3 URLs to process individually. So once we've actually run this module, if I just come into here and show you, it's executed the operations 3 times. And what that basically means is it's gone and scraped each individual URL separately. So if I come down here into the data, you can see it just has a long list of HTML, and that's basically all of the data on the website URLs that we gave it. What I've done here, and I recommend everyone actually does this, is convert the HTML back into text. Because if we were to plug all of that HTML into ChatGPT, chances are it's just going to return us an error just because of the sheer amount of data that we're actually giving it. So what this does, it just converts it back into a format that the AI actually understands, and it helps us reduce token costs just by reducing the amount of the actual input we put into the AI. So you can see here, it's just converted everything back into text. Now what I've done here is I've actually aggregated all this text back into one bundle again, because when we're going to process this in the upcoming AI modules, we don't want each individual module to run 3 separate times. We want to go ahead and turn this back into one single variable. Now the way to set this aggregator up is you just want to come into here and you want to set the source module back at the iterator where we separated it, and we just want to turn it back into one bundle, and we want to bundle all of the text together so we can actually analyze it with AI. Now like I showed you on the high level diagram, I've actually got 3 separate AI modules here. The first module is to summarize the About Us page, which extracts all of the relevant information from the About Us page. The second module I've got here is summarizing the product page. And the last module is summarizing the actual case studies page. Now, all of these prompts are pretty similar, but they just go about extracting the relevant information from each individual page. So if I go into the about page here, for the system prompt here, we've just got your intelligent, helpful B2B sales research assistant. And then for the user prompt, we've just given it a little bit of context. So you're going to be analyzing a company's about/mission page to create a factual summary for a sales report. For the task, we've got read the provided page content and create a concise factual summary of what the company says about itself. Extract only information that is explicitly stated on the page, so do not make up information. So just some rules and instructions here. Only summarize what's actually on the page, do not make up stuff. If key information is missing, don't speculate. Write in clear professional language and only focus on facts. And once again, we're instructing it to output a JSON response, which in this case is just a 3 to 5 paragraph summary covering company identity, background, geographic presence, and any other notable information that might be necessary for what we're actually looking for. Now for the second user prompt, once again, I've just inputted the data it's actually going to be analyzing. So all this means is the first value from the array module. So you can see here, this is just an array. And if we click into this, it's got each individual text. So what this basically says is you want to select the first variable from this array, which is just the first variable from this actual aggregator module, which is the About Us page, which if I show you the other prompts, everything's going to be exactly the same, but just relating to the actual product page. So here it says give us a summary around the primary products and services, target customers, etc. And if you come down into here, we've just selected the second. And if I go into the case studies page, we can see the system prompts exactly the same. We can come down into here and this just tells us to give us a summary on specific customer names, quantifiable results, company types representative, and common themes in their testimonials. And then if you come down here and see, I've just selected the third value. And like I mentioned before, in all of these, we want to come and actually output it as a JSON object, because the way that I've actually structured it, the summary here is going to be the key. And the actual description is going to be the summary that we generate with the AI module. So now that we've scraped the company's LinkedIn profile data, we've extracted data from the 3 most relevant URLs on the company's page, and then we've summarized those. The next step is to actually plug all this data into a final sales report generator that's going to produce detailed insights to tell us all about the company and specific action points going into the call. So if I come into the final AI module here, which is the sales report generator, I've actually gone ahead and kept the system prompt the exact same here because I don't really see a need to change it. But in terms of the actual instructions for what we're going to give the AI, we've got some context here. So you're creating a concise, actionable 1-page sales research report to help a sales representative or perhaps a founder to prepare for a discovery call with a prospect company. Now its task is using the provided data from the LinkedIn and website research, create a professional, well-structured sales report that gives the rep everything they need to know before the sales call. Now, in terms of the actual input data, what we're going to be feeding into this AI to produce a sales report, you can see here, and this is where the JSON objects that we generated come in handy. So the first thing they're going to be receiving here is the LinkedIn company data that we actually generated from the first AI module. And then from the 3 previous AI modules, we've got the about page summary, we've got the product service page summary, and finally, we've got the case studies page summary. Now, lastly here, we've actually got the report structure. So how should the AI actually structure the sales report that's going to be most beneficial to the sales rep? But firstly, we've got a brief overview of the company. So company name, industry, size, and location, a brief description of what they do, and their mission or positioning if it's mentioned. Next here, we've got information about their products and services, so what they offer, key features or capabilities, and their delivery model. And then next here, we've got the customers and proof point section, which is going to be the case studies. So who are some notable customers or industries that they've served, what specific results that they've mentioned, and some common use cases for their services. And then lastly here, we want to generate a section for key insights going into this call. So we want to get the AI to output 3 to 4 bullet points, including potential pain points based on their industry and their actual offerings, and some potential conversation starters and icebreakers that we can actually use going into that call that lets the prospect know that we've actually done our research. Also, just to provide a few details so we can actually position ourselves correctly going into the call. And just a few rules here so that AI actually has some guidelines to follow. Write in a clear professional language. Use headers as shown above. We want to keep this brief, so 400 to 600 words max. And this is just to format it in the actual Google Doc. And of course, to focus on the actual facts generated from the data rather than speculative facts and added assumptions, which are not explicitly true. And just a few final instructions here. We want it to write objectively. This is obviously a sales report, not a pitch. We want it to give us factual, easy to read information. And if for some reason we're not actually able to generate relevant information based on each section, we've just told the AI to output information not available. And then lastly here, we just want to output it in plain text because we can actually use this text to plug it into our Google Doc. We don't need to save this as any kind of variable. So the last step in the process here is really just for formatting. So as you can see here, we've gone and used markdown format. So it uses hashtags for titles and specific markdown formatting. We just want to put it in a way for the Google Docs to actually understand. So when we input it into the Google Docs, it formats it correctly. So what I've done here, I've just used a markdown to HTML module. And in order to find this, you just come into here, you search, you just type in markdown, and you can just use this module here and just click markdown to HTML. And what I've done is I've just plugged in the result of this AI module, and that's basically going to turn it into a HTML so Google Docs can actually recognize it. Finally, I've gone ahead and inserted this all into a Google Doc that I'm actually going to go ahead and send over to the rep or the founder. All you want to do is come into here and just give it a name. So for this example, I've used the company URL and just a sales report as the name. So www.example.com/sales report. And for the actual content of the document, I've just pasted this HTML that we generated from the previous module and saved it to a random drive. Now you can see I've ended this flow here, but you can see how you can go ahead and send it through to a sales rep in a Slack channel, or perhaps you might even want to add all this data to the relevant CRM profile. So I know that that's a bunch of information there, but hopefully you can see how a system like this works. So what I'm going to do now is show you how this system actually works. So all the way from actually inputting all the information on the booking link through to what the final sales report looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up Google and I'm just going to search for a random company. So let's say B2B marketing agency based in the UK. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up a random agency. So we can just use this one as an example. Cool. So we've got a company website link, but let's see if these guys have a LinkedIn URL that we can actually use. Cool, so it looks like they've got a LinkedIn down here. So what I'm going to go and do is I'm going to copy their LinkedIn URL. So if I come into here and I just grab this LinkedIn URL and I plug this in here, and then what we can do is go ahead and grab their company URL and plug this into here. And for this example, I'll just choose a random revenue. But before I do this, I actually want to come back into the workflow and I just want to click run once. And what this webhook's basically doing is it's listening for new data to come in. So it's actually waiting for a sales call to be booked. So if I just come into here and I just press confirm, what that'll basically do is that'll trigger our webhook and it'll start the automation. So as you can see here, we've scraped the company LinkedIn, we've scraped the data, we've got the relevant insights. Now that we've cleaned the URL, analyzing the relevant URLs, summarize the about page, summarize the product page, summarize the case studies page, and now we're going to generate the final sales report. So now that we've actually generated the Google Doc, you can see it took literally less than 30 seconds. What I can do now is head over to my Google Drive, and you can see here that we've literally just generated this Google Doc. So if I click into this, you can see it has a company overview. So we've got the company name, we've got the industry, we've got the size, we've got the location, and we've got a brief description here. So Armstrong B2B is an integrated full-service B2B marketing agency serving the world's leading industrial brands. The agency specializes in helping technical business communicate their offerings clearly and effectively through a comprehensive suite of marketing solutions. Operating across Europe and North America, they're recognized for blending technical understanding with creative communication. So this just gives you an overview of what the company does without even having to research them online. And you can see from the actual input data that we generated with literally just the LinkedIn URL and the website URL, how we can generate insights like this. Now, if we come down here into the products and services, so we've got what is their offerings and target audience. So they provide marketing services to technical and industrial businesses. And the key features of what they actually offer include brand strategy, design, SEO, CGI and 3D animations. So depending on what you actually sell and what your services are, this information might be relevant going into the sales call to help you prepare. And if we come down here into the customers and proof point section, we've got a section on notable customers or industry served, which says they're trusted by leading industrial brands serving technical business sectors. And we've got a section here that tells us about the results and outcomes. So it looks like they've got multiple industry accolades, including global ACE awards, whatever that is, DMA Gold for Best B2B. And these are great conversation starters actually going into a sales call. So you can actually mention these things as a kind of icebreaker, which is going to make it seem like you've actually done deep research into the prospects. And if we come down here into the final section, we've got some key insights going into the call. So it looks like they serve complex technical B2B clients. So you could include potential questions that are specifically about their process around that. It says here, potential pain points may include distilling technical value props into compelling, understandable messaging and visuals, which depending on what you sell, you might be able to position yourself to actually help them overcome that. And then literally, just as I mentioned, it says here, the agency's award-winning track record with industrial brands is a natural conversation starter. So you can actually go into the call mentioning the specific awards that they won just to kind of break the ice. And it says here they have a strong client base in both Europe and North America, which presents an angle to discuss transatlantic marketing and expansion. So perhaps you're a US based company and you're going to help them expand into that. Or if you're an EU based company or UK based company, you might have some ways you can go about positioning yourself relative to that. Now, just for full transparency, in this example, we weren't actually able to generate a specific case study, which either means that they don't have a case study page on their website, or the AI prompt that we used wasn't actually able to find a relevant link this time. But regardless of that, we've still got some insights into actually how to go about positioning ourselves on this call. But you can see how generating a report like this and actually getting access to something like this before a sales call is going to put you in such a better position to actually go in and close the deal. And it's going to give you a bunch of context into what the company actually does. And so you can actually position yourself on that sales call so they see the value in what you do. Now, like I said, I produced this into a Google Doc, which basically produces a sales report that you can send to your team or even yourself before a call. What you might want to do is plug all of this information into the actual lead CRM profile, or you might even want to receive this as an email notification or a Slack notification. But all in all, having a system like this in your business that actually produces high-level research in less than 30 seconds is going to be a game changer when it actually comes to saving time and generating more revenue in the long run. Now, if you want access to all of these prompts, what I've actually done is I've gone ahead and put all of these prompts and instructions into an easy to access Google Doc. So if you want all the prompts I used in this video so you can plug them into your own process, just let me know below this video and I'll go ahead and send that over to you. Cool, so I hope some of you have found value from this video. Obviously, this system I've showed you here is just the skeleton, and you can obviously build a lot of components on top of this system, but just being able to build out something like this that's able to research your prospects before the call and give you customized insights onto how to position yourself is going to be a complete game changer for your business.